Welcome to Returning to the Body Mind with your host, Dr. Melissa West. As a yoga instructor and yoga therapist, Melissa facilitates a process of listening to the wisdom of your body for self-awareness, understanding, affirmation, and transformation. Returning to the Body Mind offers the opportunity to turn inward and through the intelligence of your body find the answers about yourself and your life. Now, here's your host, Dr. Melissa West.
Well, hello and welcome to Contact Talk Radio. You're listening to Returning to the Body Mind on Wednesday, July the 7th, and I'm your host, Dr. Melissa West, coming to you live from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, as I do every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific. I'm really happy that you could join us today. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Just a little bit later this morning, I will be interviewing Dr. David Frawley. He is an author of several books, but his most recent publications are Inner Tantric Yoga and Mantra Yoga and Primal Sound. Dr. David Frawley, he's also known as Vamadeva Shastri. He lives in the U.S. and he works to form a bridge between the two widely opposing cultures of our North American culture and the Hindu culture. He is an expert in Ayurveda, Vedic astrology, yoga, and Tantra. And he is fabulous at bringing this to the West in terms of his teaching. He's written a number of books, as I said, on all these disciplines, including the two that we're going to talk about this morning, Inner Tantric Yoga and Yoga and Primal Sound. So I will be bringing him on the air in just a little bit. If you would like to call in today, we will take your calls. To speak with Dr. Frawley, you can call in toll free at 1-877-230-3062. So over the past 10 weeks, we have been working our way through the yamas and niyamas as they have been outlined in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and we've come to the final niyama personal practice, Ishvara Pranidhana, which has various meanings, and actually there's some kind of contradiction in the translations of the text about their meanings and a little bit of debate within the community. The meaning that I like to and that resonates with me the most is this idea of connecting with the divine and merging with the divine as a form of bhakti yoga, a form of devotion. And it's this idea that we can have this wholehearted dedication to the divine light and all. And I love that version of it. Nichola Joy Devi talks about it that way. And she says that, and this is interesting because it really speaks to what we're going to be talking about today, that it's actually bhakti yoga that is the most practiced in the world, not hatha yoga. Hatha yoga might be the most practiced in North America, but bhakti yoga is very popular in the world. So this idea of practicing Ishvara Pranidhana, this connection with the divine, it's just a matter of pausing and taking time to feel a connection to our inner divine and to the divine, the all-pervading light within all beings. One of the ways that we can connect with this is by communing in nature and seeing the divine energy in all things that are in nature and seeing the energy of things. That really helps us to connect to our inner light and see it as all pervasive. So, we've talked in the past about how ahimsa is sort of the pinnacle of the yamas. And again, I like how Nichola Joy Devi talks about how Ishvara Pranidhana is the pinnacle of the niyamas. So she says that we can practice Ishvara Pranidhana when we live in harmony with the other four niyamas. So saucha, cleanliness, tapas, that discipline, santosha, contentment, and svadhyaya, the idea of study by and of oneself. And I have to say, as many of you know, over the last 3 weeks, I did a cleanse. And the cleanse was a really simple cleanse. I loved it. It was just no animal products, no wheat, no sugar, no refined foods. And I finished the cleanse on Monday, and I have to say at the tail end of it, I feel really great. And what's interesting to me about it is that at the end of it, there's this real desire to connect with the divine. So it's almost as if once I get rid of those other sort of, desire and craving for certain foods, which the cleanse helped me to do, then I have more space, more spaciousness to be able to put my attention on focusing on the divine within. Also, the body feels cleaner, so there's less distraction, so I'm able to connect to the divine within. Lots of different ways of doing this. We're going to talk about this a lot this morning with Dr. Frawley, but we can use prayer, which might be a way that's familiar to a lot of us because we may have grown up in church communities where we learned how to pray. Something as simple as giving blessings both to yourself and others. Sometimes I love to, when I'm sitting at a stoplight, just imagine blessing each person that drives by in the car. And then mantra, of course, mantra is what we're going to be talking about a lot today, is a great way of connecting with the divine. So without further ado, I would love to bring on Dr. David Frawley and ask him to maybe fill in any of the blanks or expand on anything he might want to on that topic.
Yes, Melissa. First of all, you've given a really beautiful and clear and almost complete presentation on the topic. Ishvara Pranidhana is surrender to the divine within, as you might say, the innermost core of our being, the reality within our heart. It doesn't not involve necessarily with anything formal externally. The divine is the core of our inner being. And it's a surrender to the divine in a way that is personal to us. So it's connected to an idea which is called Ishta Devata, or worshiping the divine in a form that you choose. So in the yoga tradition, actually one of the most common ways of Ishvara Pranidhana is surrender to the divine as the mother, because Ishvara is just a generic term for the divine as father, mother, all the relationships. So it is something personal to you. It's not something formal from the outside. It's something you discover within yourself. It's something that you do in a way that works for you in your life. As you mentioned, it involves working with recognizing the divine presence in other people, the divine presence in nature, the sacred nature of all life. There is the whole yoga, bhakti yoga, for dealing with that. That's as well defined as all the other yogas. There's the Narada Bhakti Yoga Sutras, for example, the whole Yoga Sutras on bhakti alone. There is everything from formal temple worship on the outside to the pure meditational worship within. As you mentioned, the importance of prayer and mantra, and even the recitation of divine names, divine qualities, but again, as part of our own deeper self, as an inner yoga of integration of our own individual being with the supreme being, which is behind all names and forms, and yet also transcends all names and forms.
So I'm curious, because when I was doing my research around talking about this morning and preparing it for my yoga class later today, I was actually kind of surprised to come across some debate in the field about the meaning behind it and the sort of more purist translations of it as connecting to inner knowledge and almost like disconnecting from the sense of it as being devotion or divine.
I wouldn't call it a purist. If you look at all the traditional commentaries, devotion is the primary factor. I think what's happened in the modern world, you see, sutras are very short topic items. So they allow people to have various interpretations. So I think what's happened in the modern world is people have tried to make this idea appealing to people who don't come from a devotional cultural background. And because of that, then there's the idea of surrender to the cosmic power within you. There's the idea of connecting to higher knowledge, or Ishvara, the divine, is the source, is the inner guru also, connecting to the inner guru, connecting to the inner source of guidance. These, I would say, are not incorrect, but I would say they would be a little narrow in their interpretation of it.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. That sits well with me.
And as the point you mentioned, bhakti yoga is probably the most common form of yoga practice. Even when people are taking up kirtan today, that kirtan is actually one of the chief practices of the bhakti yoga. Kirtan means praising, and it involves repeating mantras, names, and prayers of the divine in the various forms. And throughout India, bhakti yoga is the most common. Even we find in other religious traditions that the devotion, faith, is often the primary form. But bhakti as a yoga is not just devotion, it's a sadhana, it's a practice, it is a discipline. It even has its own science and philosophy.
Right. So let's back up a bit, because I just basically brought you right on and got you talking right away. For those people who don't know you, why don't you maybe tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into yoga and what keeps you with your study of yoga and what it means to you?
Okay, that's of course the big question at this point. I also got into yoga as part of the late 60s generation. I'm actually having my 60th birthday this year. But in my work, I was interested in the deeper and the older traditions, which involved, for me, a study of the Vedic text in the original Sanskrit. I was also concerned with the broader yogic teachings, which brought me into study of things like Vedanta, Ayurvedic medicine, Vedic astrology. And then I did a lot of travel and study in India, and then I was put in this position of kind of being a bridge between East and West, where I'm not only explaining the traditional Vedic yogic teachings to Western audience, but also giving them a modern idiom, you might say, for an Eastern audience. And I've also had a practical bent of mind, and for me, this Ayurvedic medicine is a very good way of bringing these Vedic and yogic ideas into people's everyday life. So I've done a lot of work in that field as well. And we have, of course, courses, books, and programs in these different areas. And I found that yoga is part of a whole set of sacred sciences and a whole way of life, a whole spiritual culture. And I think it's very important that people who move into yoga recognize that and reach out and seek to understand this whole greater tradition and field of yoga.
So I love asking this question to my guests, and that is, what keeps you immersed in this greater tradition of yoga?
Well, it's become basically pretty much everything I do, and yoga is also something that resonates with me through nature. To me, yoga is not something man-made. It's the way of connecting with the sacred in nature, the cosmic intelligence, with the what we say, the conscious universe. It's also a way of understanding the essence of life. A lot of our simple yoga practices are things like eating, breathing, seeing, hearing. So yoga is part of life, and life is yoga. So when one opens up to that, then it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to be talking today about your book, Inner Tantric Yoga, and the last time I had you on the show, you had just released this book, and you were talking about how it's very different than sort of popular versions of Tantra in our North American culture today. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Well, you see, again, we often have this division or difference between what has become popular here and what is the broader tradition. And actually, in India, Tantra is a whole set of sacred sciences, energetic approaches, and we might say an inner alchemy. So we also have tantric versions of the yoga, Ayurveda, Vedic astrology, and they all involve this internal balancing of energies, but not simply human energies, but the cosmic energies, which we define as Shiva and Shakti, as the great elements, as the gunas, as the planetary forces. So Tantra means the weaving. It means, actually, in modern Sanskrit, the term Tantra is used for technology. It means the practical application. So the inner Tantra is working with the inner yoga of balancing the fire and the water, the sun and the moon, you might say, the Shiva Shakti, or even yin-yang forces within ourselves, so that we can be connected to the entire universe, and to the entire universe as a conscious reality and as a spiritual presence through all of our lives.
And I'm just so glad that you put this together in this book, because I know when I first came to yoga and as I continue to practice yoga, this idea of oneness can seem so massive. And to have these really practical, concrete tools and ways of looking at it was super, super helpful for me.
Great. Because there are some wonderful tools to do that. You know, for example, in yoga, we work a lot with balancing the right and left sides of the body through the breath. Mm-hmm. When we balance the breath and bring it into the central channel, the central flow, then we move out of the disturbing emotions we have. We move out of our disturbed sensations, and we can enter into more a unitary state of awareness. So yoga, the beauty of yoga is not just simply something abstract. You know, you can have a beautiful philosophy, but if you don't actually have tools of inner transformation, it doesn't take you very far. And that's what yoga gives us. And it says you can do these tools, and then you can experience for yourself directly the nature of the reality, and that is what we need. We need to cultivate our own direct experience, and our direct experience not just of ourselves outwardly, but of this deeper inner being we have that is one with nature, one with the universe, and that carries all the cosmic forces.
Well, I just love the way you talk about this, and it's time for us to go to our first break. But when we come back from the break, we'll continue to talk about our inner being, and we'll talk about the role of the gods and the goddesses in this tradition. So I'm Dr. Melissa West, yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and host of Returning to the Body Mind. Today we're talking to our guest, Dr. Frawley, author of Inner Tantric Yoga. To find out more about Yoga with Me or Dr. Frawley, check out my website, www.melissawest.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
For over 25 years, Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy has been creating yoga therapists who have supported thousands in inner healing. Now, Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy offers teacher training. Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy offers a therapeutic approach to teaching with a body-mind focus. You'll become the kind of teacher who enables and empowers their students to use their yoga practice to change their lives, overcome stress, heal from the inside, heal relationships, and discover their unique magnificence. For more information on yoga teacher training with Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy, visit www.pryt.com. That's www.pryt.com. And look for Yoga Teacher Training under the Training Programs drop-down menu. Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy offers yoga teacher training with a whole new twist. This is a Yoga Alliance approved 200-hour certification course.
ContactTalkRadio.com.
Want to practice yoga with Melissa in your very own home? Visit melissawest.com and click on DVD link to find great yoga and Pilates videos for use in your DVD player. From chakra balancing to awesome abs, boost your immunity, or take a yoga detox. Release pain in your upper back, neck, and shoulders, or decenter your depression. There is something for everybody. Check out melissawest.com. That's melissawest.com and pick up your yoga DVD today.
Listening to Returning to the Body Mind with your host, Dr. Melissa West. To talk to Melissa during the show, call toll-free 1-877-230-3062.
Welcome back. Before we go back to my guest, Dr. Frawley, and our discussion today about inner tantric yoga, I want to thank everybody who has signed up for my weekly newsletter. Just to let you know, you can still sign up for that. We completely redesigned my webpage, and you might want to go and take a look at it, because Tim, my husband, did a fabulous job of it. It looks absolutely amazing. If you go to www.melissawest.com, you can find it there. And then on the bottom right-hand side is the sign-up box for the newsletter. And in that newsletter, I include articles each week. And over the last 10 weeks, I've been writing articles on each one of the yamas and the niyamas. So they're a great resource, and I encourage you to register for that. And then, of course, the other thing that I do offer weekly is my free yoga video podcast. And last week we worked with the fourth niyama, and we focused on svadhyaya. And we did this, it was so great, by connecting with nature. We actually did record the class outside, and we looked at some of the elements in nature, including the earth, the sun, and the moon, and we connected to those energies. And then we did this really great Kundalini Kriya for knowing the essence of the self, which just really brought you into this real beautiful inner calm. So that's available now if you want to go to www.namasteyoga.blip.tv. So I was just thinking, let's look at what's going on for our sponsors right now. Currently, Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy, our sponsor, is in Toronto through July 7th to today, actually. So it's the 7th to the 17th. Then they will be in Chicago at the end of the month. And at the beginning of August. They will be in Seattle, Washington from August 16th to the 19th, and then again from the 21st to the 26th, and then in Austin, Texas from the 26th to the 29th. And I know they're going to be at the Open Center in New York on September 28th to October the 1st. So I would encourage you to check that out. Also, I would encourage you to look at my annual yoga retreat. We're going to be going from October 22nd, 23rd, and the 24th. And I let you know about this now. It may seem a little bit early, but it does tend to sell out this fall retreat. So if you're interested, we would love to see you. You can register early for that, as it does sell out. And then just before we went on the air, Dr. Frawley and I were talking about his travels this summer. And do you want to let our listeners know about where you're going to be?
Summer, we're not doing so many programs. We are doing a program actually in Toronto this weekend through a number. It's a Dharma convention through a number of the Hindu organizations of the greater Toronto, and that's accessible at www.vedicculturalcenter.com. But the Vedic Cultural Center is CENTRE.com. So that's the, and also there's www.dharmaconvention.com. So that's the most immediate place we will be.
Fabulous. So before the break, we were beginning to talk about, I said we were going to start talking about the role of the devatas, the gods and the goddesses.
Yes, this is a very important idea. Again, what we have is that we do have the Ishvara as representing the general divine energy, but that comes to us in a very personal way, and it pervades all of nature. There are sacred presences and powers everywhere, and in various traditions these are called devatas, which are sometimes called gods and goddesses. They may also be called angels, celestial spirits, or any number of things, but they represent the more intimate forms or the more direct ways to communicate with the divine in our environment, and how the divine energies pervade all aspects of nature. They also include certain relationships one may have with the divine, like the divine as the father, divine as the mother, but also recognizing the divine presence in the elements, in the planets, the stars, which is not a worship of the outer forms of these things, but a recognition that there's a divine essence not simply in human beings, but in every aspect of nature and in every force that we work with, including simple things like the breath, including even the light that is around us.
And you say, too, that each person has a primary devata as a focus of their practice.
Well, the tradition of yoga is that one chooses or takes on a certain orientation or relationship with the divine, or a certain form called an Ishtadevata. This may be a certain manifestation of the deity, like in the Hindu tradition, Shiva or Vishnu or the goddess in different forms. It may be an attitude connecting to the divine as the mother, as the father. It may be some combination of these. It may be recognizing the sacred presence in the sun, the mountains. So yoga involves that kind of personal relationship with the deity. So the deity is not just simply some abstract divine, some being far away, but is the core of our own being and the, might say, the most essential form of relationship that we have.
So we talked a little bit about this at the break, and you cautioned me as I was talking about my connection with Kali as that being a strong goddess. And so, how would you recommend people begin connecting to this way of practicing yoga?
Well, first of all, it's a very simple thing. We all have a certain sense of the divine within our hearts, and there are, as you mentioned, Kali, there are strong forms and there are soft forms. Strong forms help purify us, just like purifying therapies. Soft forms help nurture us, just like rejuvenating food and herbs. Usually, we find people in the beginning are always a little bit, in our culture, a little bit agitated. So often, we need to kind of calm them and make their lives more emotionally balanced, to bring more nurturing, bring more grounding into them before we seek to connect them with the higher and stronger, and we might say a more cosmic forces. You need to prepare the vessel to hold the energy. And so we often start with softer forms or just connecting to the divine as the mother in order to allow that to occur.
So how would people do that? How would you recommend people do that?
Well, there are many ways they can do it. There may be a form of the divine in their tradition. For example, there are many beautiful forms of the Madonna. There's also many forms of the mother in other traditions. We have the Tara form of the Buddhist. Then the Hindu tradition has every form of the mother in all of her forms, pervading all of nature and all of human relationships. So that's often a very good way to start. Sometimes connecting devotionally to a human teacher or a guru can be a good place to start as well. And just simply beginning to honor the divine presence in everything. It's not just human beings that have a intelligence and a person and a self. That is the self in all things, and honoring that divine self in all things can help us move in that direction. But I would say the simplest form is the form and approach of the Mother Goddess.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you say that these gods and goddesses, they represent our divine self. How does this work?
Well, you see, our inner self is a cosmic being. We're trapped in our psychology, which is the memories and experiences of our personal life, this particular physical incarnation, our social interaction. But if we can calm our surface mind through devotion, meditation, you can discover that the entire universe dwells within you. You are a cosmic being. You are infinite. You are eternal. You embrace all time and space, and you transcend all time and space. So we ourselves are part of that greater divinity, and that divinity is not just limited to a body. It pervades all of nature. In our own consciousness, we can move out of the body consciousness and embrace our being in all beings. So the important thing of understanding the gods and goddesses or the devatas is that these divine powers are within and around us, and we can work with them to move beyond the limitations of the human ego and to embrace the entire universe as our own self and being.
And so the sort of primary overarching ways of talking about these gods and goddesses is the Shiva and the Shakti. Is that correct?
Well, Shiva and Shakti represent the two basic powers, you might say, the divine and the cosmic masculine form, the Shiva, and the divine and the cosmic feminine form as the Shakti. But they also represent the duality of the forces in nature, like the yin and the yang. Shiva is the mountain, Shakti is the valley, Shiva is the sun. The Shakti is the moon, Shiva is the fire, the Shakti is the water. So everywhere in life we have this deeper duality of, we might say, electrical and magnetic forces interwoven in various ways. And once we connect with these dualistic powers, we can then move back to this deeper integration. And if we even look through all the traditional cultures, we find the pyramids, we find the Shakti altars, the kuns, we find this whole sense of a cosmic symbolism of the dualistic powers that connects us to all aspects of life and consciousness.
And you've spent a lot of time this morning and a lot of time in your book, which I found so interesting and so useful, about talking about the Shakti of nature, the sun, the moon, the earth, the trees, the mountains. Can you describe that a little bit more to us? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, you see, there's a certain energy or essence. In yoga, we also talk a little bit about the prana, but there's a certain transformative quality that everything has. There may be a certain beauty, a certain color, a certain sound. It may be a certain movement. So this is the Shakti, for example. There's a certain Shakti or power that can bring about healing. In art, there's a certain Shakti or power that can show beauty for us. A certain insight can give us a certain Shakti that changes the way that we see the world. We live in, even from the standpoint of modern science, a cataclysmic universe filled with magical and transformational energies. And really, yoga is about learning to access those magical powers that are around us in very simple things, whether it's the power of the breath, the power of seeing. So when we understand the presence of Shakti everywhere, then there are points of transformation in different places in space. There are points of transformation at different moments in time, and we can learn to ride these waves of the cosmic energy and use them to really expand our awareness and expand our sense of being on all levels.
So what if we were to take some time to unpack one of those elements of nature to look more deeply at that, so people have an example of what you're talking about? Do you want to choose one?
Certainly. For example, even something as simple as water. See, we think of water as life, but there's also the cosmic waters of space that carry the energies of consciousness. There is the certain Shakti or prana that the ocean has that is very vast, that absorbs. There's a certain Shakti that the mountain stream has that is very purifying, opening the inner channels and the nadis. There's a certain Shakti or power that the mountain lake has, which creates stillness and deep meditation. There is the inner water that nourishes our inner being, and you might say we have an inner thirst for delight and peace and inner happiness. There are certain inner waters of consciousness that we can bring into our meditation. There are, of course, the waters of the rains that carry the prana of the sky and also help stimulate the growth on the earth. After the rain, one can feel that Shakti, particularly after a thunder shower, where you have the electrical lightning Shakti that enters into the raindrops and brings not only water to the ground, but brings a very stimulating life force.
And so that is just so beautiful and interesting to me. And I think I could spend a year just practicing what you've just talked about with water. So in our own spiritual practices, we could simply spend some time connecting with water in different ways, either going and sitting by a lake or a stream, and these would all be very nurturing for our spirit.
Yes, nurturing, cooling, cleansing. In fact, and also getting to understand oneself. Your own being is connected to these cosmic waters. Even most of the enjoyment we seek in life is through water, as swimming, as going, as going on the lakes, as skiing, as all this. Water is actually something very important for us, but we forget its sacred essence and then just treat it as some thing, some outer force.
Well, one thing that's really interesting, where I live very close to us, we have Niagara Falls in Canada, and then there's the American side too. we like to go every summer, and my husband and I always comment on how people come to Niagara Falls in droves to look at it, that there's this real sort of magnetic attraction to it, and trying to figure out what it is that attracts people to it. And so when you talk this morning, that brings some, understanding to that.
And Shakti is like a waterfall. And of course, those are very powerful waterfalls, and the water absorbs. You can use the water, for example, you can do a mantra on a rock, and you can put it in the water and let the flow of water carry the power of your mantra. You can energize the water with your meditation. Your wishes, you can use the cosmic waters, the earthly waters, to magnify and energize all your deeper wishes and aspirations.
So this is really beautiful, because I just feel you expanding this, what was for me this kind of very narrow-minded sense of what devotion was about, to making it this really beautiful, all-pervasive thing.
Well, what we do in our India retreats is they have a tradition of making these little boats with different leaves put together, and then they put a little ghee lamp on it and some flowers and light it, and then we float it down the Ganga River. And we have people do that every night to connect to this sense of offering to the sacred powers. And they call them wish boats, to put out their wishes and their aspirations and let the river carry them to their ultimate goal.
I love that. I can see doing something like that with my daughter here. We live right by Lake Ontario, and we could make little boats out of paper and put them on Lake Ontario.
Yes, and it brings so much meaning to life and connects people in a very simple and direct way, and makes it part of your own experience and your own reality.
I love that. Well, we have to go to another break, but when we come back, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about your India retreats, because they really intrigue me, and I'm sure they intrigue a lot of our listeners. So I'm Dr. Melissa West, and you're listening to Returning to the Body Mind on Contact Talk Radio. My guest is Dr. David Frawley. He is the author of Inner Tantric Yoga. Stay with us, and we will be right back.
Have you heard the news? Now you can download Melissa's much-loved yoga classes each week. Visit www.melissawest.com to download and subscribe to Melissa's free weekly video podcast featuring her Hatha yoga classes. This yoga video podcast will allow you to integrate your physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual bodies through yoga with Dr. Melissa West's personalized yoga instruction. Download Melissa's yoga classes today for use on your iPod, computer, or TV. Today at melissawest.com.
Did you know that you can rate this show on iTunes? The show you're listening to right now. It's true. You can leave your thoughts about the show, the topic, the guest. You can even leave a suggestion. Then before you leave, rate the show. The hosts love hearing from you, so next time you download this show from iTunes, leave your thoughts and rate the show for the host and for others.
Discover a powerful mind-body system that has helped thousands of people achieve inner peace and fulfillment. Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy uses yogic approaches to deepen presence and awareness to know ourselves more fully. Out of this knowing, we are more easily moved to embrace the opportunity for change, growth, and enhanced well-being. Through assisted yoga postures and non-directive dialogue, Phoenix Rising practitioners guide clients to experience the connection of their physical and emotional selves. You will learn how to recognize and release the body-stored memories, fears, and traumas that trap you in the past. You will discover how to embrace your daily joys and fears to live your life to the fullest and find your own true self. To find out more about their training programs or to find a practitioner near you, go to www.pryt.com, as in PhoenixRisingYogaTherapy.com.
Listening live right now? Join the party. Visit our chat room at contacttalkradio.com.
You're You're listening to Returning to the Body Mind with your host, Dr. Melissa West. To talk to Melissa during the show, call toll-free 1-877-230-3062.
Welcome back. I'm here with my guest, Dr. David Frawley, and we're talking about his book, Inner Tantric Yoga, and also about his newest book, Mantra Yoga and Primal Sound. And I said when we came back from the break, I wanted to talk to him about his India retreat. So tell us about your India retreat.
Well, we do an annual, we call it a Ma Ganga Shakti retreat in Rishikesh. I think next year it's March 10th to 16th. It's actually above Rishikesh, some 25 kilometers, in a private place on the river itself. So we have the whole river to ourselves, in a very sacred place near one of the sacred meditation caves, and a place near where Anandamoy Ma, the great modern saint of India, woman saint, also would stay there. But the purpose of our retreat is to connect people directly with the divine presence in nature through the forces of the Shiva and the Shakti, and also through the power of the Ganga, the Ganges, which is the great sacred river of India, and to allow people to connect to the power of the Himalayan mountains. This is in the Himalayan foothills, and to have a sense of that, the tradition of the great yogis and rishis and sages that are there, but not as something external, but something internal, so that one can have a direct experience of how to make one's life sacred, how to have a sacred space. We do special traditional fire offerings, special flower offerings. We teach special mantras and chanting and meditations and pranayamas and a gentle approach to the asana. We have an international group. We often have a significant number of people from Brazil, but also Europe, India, and the United States. So it's kind of an inner celebration of these cosmic powers and the turning of yoga into life and nature, and an embracing the yoga tradition, you might say, in its homeland, and where we can experience its connection to nature for ourselves. And the goal is to help us develop our own direct experience and awareness that we can take back and use to make our entire lives sacred and aware and devotional.
So you talk about returning to the homeland of yoga, and this one of my questions for you as you began talking about this that came up for me was, how important do you feel it is for North American yogis to make this pilgrimage to India?
Well, we travel all over the world. We take holidays in Europe. We go to South America. We go all over the place. So in our travels, particularly if we're yoga people, we should recognize the beauty and the power of the homeland of yoga, and to have some connections there. Even people who study Chinese medicine will go to China for advanced study. And the importance of the homeland of yoga is that you have so many ashrams, you have so many temples, you have a living tradition that is going on there, and you have maintained certain sacred practices there and a way of life. And the purpose is not simply to go to a foreign place, but to kind of get that essence of how to relate to life and nature, how to make life sacred, and take that back and live with it. It's also a good place for yogis all over the world to come together.
Interesting. It's so interesting to me. I'm putting my intention out to join you one of these times.
You're welcome.
So, the other thing that I really wanted to talk to you about, and I think this has to do with my background in cultural studies, that this really intrigued me too, was that you talked about in your book on Inner Tantric Yoga, is the sensory overload of our modern culture and how it becomes really important for us to use yoga to deal with it. Can you speak to that?
Yes, in fact, I've mentioned that in my books on Ayurveda, the Ayurvedic healing, the Ayurveda mind, the Yoga and Ayurveda. The sensory aspect is very important. And what's happened to us is we're receiving our sensory stimulation from the outside, from the mass media. What we tell people Ayurvedically is what junk food does to the body, junk sensory impressions does to the mind. So we need wholesome, natural impressions for the mind, just as we need wholesome, natural food for the body. And I know people who are taking good diets, but having a lot of junk into their mind through the media, through all these political things and so forth, we will let people into our minds that we would never let into our houses.
Right, yeah.
So, and then we have this epidemic of depression going on. The simple cause of all depression is stimulation. As long as you're dependent upon stimulation, once that stimuli is withdrawn, you're going to feel depressed. So we need to honor our senses as sacred. This is one of the most important aspects of Tantra. And we do this through attuning our senses to nature, which means we need to kind of move them from the media. The media moves too fast. It overstimulates, overheats us, and burns us out. When we align our senses to the forces of nature, then we cool down, we calm down, we concentrate, we nourish ourselves through the fire, the water, the air, the light, the plants, the flowers, and we gain an entirely new relationship with life. So yoga, this is actually a little bit of the pratyahara aspect of yoga, involves this moving away from disturbed sensations and embracing the natural, the vast, the expansive energies that come to us through our senses, which should be instruments of worship, not simply instruments of self-indulgence.
That is so interesting to me, because we do have this epidemic of depression in our North American culture that
it's all over the world now, and it follows the stimulation. And I sometimes tell people, what if I gave you the best possible wheelchair in the world? You just push buttons, and you could have a TV screen, you could have the best food in the world, anything possible, and you would put everybody in this wheelchair. Everybody's going to atrophy. That's what the media is doing for us. It's giving the best possible thing on the outside, but that means you're not on the outside. You're on the inside. You tend to atrophy because everything is coming to you from the outside. And after so many years of stimulation, you're worn out, and you haven't developed your own inner creativity. That's our.
I love that description as atrophy, because to me that is what depression is. It's just kind of emotional flatlining.
Yeah, because we're used to getting our emotional stimulation from the outside. So when that stimuli is no longer there, or when we're used to it, then we don't have anything on the inside. Why can't we be happy just being ourselves? Why can't we be happy or experience beauty and bliss just closing our eyes? Why do we need some huge screen and loud music and powerful media presentation when we can find that magic in looking at a flower?
Well, and I'm thinking right now of people who have TVs in every room in their home, and they have to have them on all the time.
That means your mind is being occupied by somebody else. And the general rule is if you allow somebody else to occupy your mind, they will do so for their advantage.
Right.
Just like you let a foreign army occupy your country, they will tell you what to do.
Right. Hence the culture of consumerism, which is just having a devastating effect on our Mother Earth.
Yes, and we also say that the consumer becomes the consumed. In the end, as a consumer, you are consumed by these same forces, and the culture of consumerism, of course, as you say, it consumes the earth. It damages nature. It damages our mother, and it damages our for example, it damages our planetary immune system. If our planetary immune system is weakened, how can we as individuals be physically or psychologically happy?
Well, I also wanted to, we're coming to the end of the show and we only have a few minutes left, but I did want to make sure I had a little bit of time to ask about your latest publication, Mantra Yoga in Primal Sound.
Yes, the Inner Tantric Yoga book directs us to these deeper practices. Even a lot of yoga does. The Mantra Yoga book is aimed at the practice of Mantra Yoga, particularly using the seed mantras or the bija mantras or what we call the Shakti mantras, which is probably the most universal practice of yoga. Mantra yoga is something you can do all the time. You can't do asanas all the time or pranayama all the time. It's something that you can bring into all aspects of psychological and emotional healing. It's the foundation for meditation, because if our minds are not calmed and concentrated, we cannot meditate. It's the basis of devotion, because the mantra is also a divine name or way of connecting to the deity. It is a way of connecting to the cosmic vibration, which is largely cosmic sound, which is pervading and vibrating through everything. So mantra yoga is probably the most important tool of yoga. It's also a very important tool of healing, psychological, emotional, and pranic. So in the mantra yoga book, we have introduced these ideas, and even our body of sound, what we call the mantra purusha, which is used for healing purposes. The book has just come out, so it's going to take a little while to get into the stores, but it is an effort to teach people how mantras work, why sounds have certain meaning, and where they resonate in the body-mind, and how we can adjust their energies in expansive and centering, in heating and cooling, in various ways to bring this deeper harmony and balance to our being.
Mm. Well, I know I enjoyed Inner Tantric Yoga so much, and I'm looking forward to getting into the mantra book as even more practical application of what you began to talk about in Inner Tantric Yoga.
Wonderful. I believe you're also having my wife Shambhavi on shortly.
I was just going to say that. So I am so looking forward to meeting Shambhavi. We're going to talk about, I'm so excited to talk to her about Shakti and Kali, because these are her latest books that we're going to be talking about. She's coming on August the 18th, and I'm just delighted to have her. So before you go, can you just tell us how people can find out more about you and your books, maybe a website?
Well, the best thing is through our own website, which is vedanet.com, vedanet.com, and we have links there for all of our books. I actually have more than 30 books, including we have a number that are online. We also have courses on yoga, Ayurveda, and Vedic astrology and their various applications. We do teach worldwide. We're doing a lot of work later on this year in Brazil, for example, where we're introducing our courses into South America. We also do work with India and various India-based organizations on our website. We also have various online articles, resources. So there's quite a bit for you to find there. And we have links to our Facebook page. On our Facebook page, we have many, many pictures of our retreats and programs, including most beautiful pictures of Indian temples and rituals and nature scenes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Frawley.
Thank you again, Melissa. You're always a very gracious and insightful host, and it's always very wonderful to be with you.
Well, that is just a reflection of your gracious teaching skills, so thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you again.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. I encourage you to visit my website, melissawest.com, to find out more about yoga and yoga therapy with me. And when you're there, you can sign up for my healthy lifestyle, for my newsletter. If you just put your email, it's on the bottom right now. So remember to check out Namaste Yoga, www.namasteyoga.blip.tv for my free weekly yoga video podcast. And thank you to everybody who has been sending me emails, letting me know how they're enjoying those. You know, that really, really makes my week and really makes that, that offering to you all worthwhile for me. So I find it such an honor to be able to share yoga in that way and make it accessible to so many people. I'll be back next week on July the 14th with Carla McLaren. We're going to be talking about the language of emotions. And what's really interesting to me is that she's going to help us delve right into especially the dark and dishonored emotions and how they hold a tremendous amount of energy. And so we'll work with her to learn how to meet our emotions and receive their wisdom safely to move towards resolution and equilibrium. Remember, you can listen to archives of my show at melissawest.com, or you can sign up to have Returning to the Body Mind automatically downloaded onto your computer through iTunes. If you go to melissawest.com and click on the radio link, you'll find your way to that. So I'm your host, Dr. Melissa West, coming to you live from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, as I do every Wednesday from 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Thank you so much for listening today. And again, thanks to Dr. David Frawley for joining us. Join us next Wednesday at 8 a.m. and bring a friend to Returning to the Body Mind. Stay tuned for Doug Parks and his show, Science for Life. May the rising sun bless your heart with joy. May the setting sun bless your mind with peace. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to Returning to the Body Mind with your host, Dr. Melissa West. To pick up a yoga video or to download a free weekly video podcast of Melissa's yoga classes, visit www.melissawest.com. That's www.melissawest.com.